The first thing you need to understand is that this story didn't begin with a headline or a hacker. It began with a question: what happens when one person, sitting alone in a dimly lit room, can bend the will of a nation to their own design? It was an ordinary evening, the kind where time seems to slow and the hum of computers fills the silence. A young man sat hunched over a keyboard, the glow from his monitors painting his face in shades of blue and green. He clicked and typed with a precision that was almost surgical, each movement deliberate, careful, as if the very fate of the world rested on his fingertips. And, in a way, it did. This country, let's call it Aurora, was in the middle of a heated election. Citizens debated in coffee shops, on television, in endless social media threads. Hope and fear collided like storm clouds over every street corner. And then, quietly, almost imperceptibly, the numbers began to shift. First, it was subtle. A few precincts reporting slightly unusual patterns. Officials shrugged, citing glitches, human error, a miscommunication. But as the night deepened, the anomalies became impossible to ignore. Votes were being rerouted, tallies quietly adjusted, and the results, supposed to reflect the voice of millions, began to feel wrong. The world didn't notice at first. Headlines came slowly. The first news story was a whisper. Election irregularities detected. Then came the panic. Analysts, journalists, cybersecurity experts scrambled to trace what had happened. And what they found was chilling. This wasn't a simple hack. It wasn't a clumsy intrusion or a desperate act of political sabotage. It was artistry. Digital footprints led to nowhere, the attacker covering every trace, leaving only questions. Each move was calculated, almost poetic, like a composer arranging notes to create tension, suspense, and ultimately, transformation. Experts have debated endlessly about motive. Some believed it was ideology, a radical statement about a system they viewed as corrupt. Others whispered that it was something darker, a need to prove that even the most sophisticated democracies were fragile, vulnerable, and, in the right hands, manipulable. Yet others suggested it was pure curiosity, a young mind testing boundaries, discovering the power of invisibility. And here is where it becomes hauntingly human. For all the headlines, all the national panic, the hacker remained invisible. There were no threats, no boastful tweets, no manifestos. Just one person alone, reshaping history from a quiet corner of the world. Investigators began piecing together fragments of his life. Childhood friends remembered a boy who could spend hours coding games no one else understood. A quiet, polite child who preferred algorithms to conversations. Neighbors recalled a young man who barely left his apartment, polite when he did, but largely invisible, unremarkable. There was nothing, absolutely nothing, in his ordinary existence to suggest he could hold the power to bend a nation's will. Yet he did. The consequences were immediate and dramatic. Election officials tried to correct the anomalies, but the damage was done. Trust was fractured. Citizens protested, some demanding new votes, others retreating into cynicism. And all the while, the architect of this disruption remained absent, a ghost haunting the headlines, the news cycles, and the hearts of a country struggling to understand what had just happened. Some experts suggest that this hacker wasn't just a person. He was a mirror, a reflection of society's fragility, the vulnerabilities hidden beneath layers of bureaucracy, law, and technology. He forced the world to confront the uncomfortable truth, that the systems we trust are only as strong as the people and code that uphold them. And sometimes that isn't enough. Then came the twist that no one expected. Weeks after the election, a digital message surfaced on an obscure forum. It was cryptic, unsigned, and ephemeral. Experts who examined it said it was a signature, a personal hallmark, almost like a painter signing a canvas. But it didn't reveal who he was. It didn't apologize, explain, or justify. It simply existed, a ghostly footprint confirming what had already been suspected. He was out there, somewhere, watching, waiting, or perhaps long gone. The story deepens when you realize the broader impact. This was not just a hack, it was a statement. In the weeks and months that followed, governments around the world began reevaluating their cybersecurity protocols. Elections were audited, systems redesigned, and yet in quiet corners of the digital world, whispers persisted. If one person could do this once, could it happen again? And who else could be waiting? There's a strange, almost cinematic beauty to the way he operated. He did not seek fame. He did not crave recognition. He existed at the intersection of intellect, curiosity, and isolation, an ordinary human wielding extraordinary power. And in that, there is a truth that is both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Sometimes, the most profound disruptions come not from armies or politicians, but from a single mind, armed with knowledge and the audacity to act. In trying to imagine him, we confront ourselves. What drives someone to take such risks? Is it loneliness, boredom, genius, morality, or a combination of all? Could it have been you or me under the right circumstances? That is the unsettling reality. History is not only shaped by the powerful and the visible, it is also shaped by the unseen, the overlooked, the quiet forces lurking behind the world's bright lights. And perhaps that is the most human part of all. The hacker was ordinary and yet extraordinary, invisible, yet impossible to ignore, forgotten, yet unforgettable. He reminds us of the fragility of trust, the perils of neglect, and the extraordinary power of a single individual willing to act when no one else dares. As the sun sets on this story, one question lingers. Haunting, persistent, impossible to ignore. Who was he? Where is he now? And what does his story say about the world we live in, and the invisible hands that may still be shaping it, even now? Because in the end, the hacker may be gone, but the impact of his actions, the tremors he left behind, will echo for generations. And perhaps, in that echo, we hear something more than the story of a lone genius. We hear a reflection of ourselves, and the delicate, unpredictable, and astonishing world we have built.